This couldn't have possibly happened at a better time. Ripple is at a critical pivot point and looks like it's ready to explode for new all-time highs as bulls are now in control. And just a few days ago, over $235 billion was added to the crypto market in a single day, sparking new life and hope into very tired and very bored crypto investors. Now, this year, Ripple has been no stranger to bullish news and developments under the Trump administration, even with the first 100 days being very poor performers. Ripple has still held up really well, but it's like they can't stop winning because Paul Atkins, the new chairman of the SEC, just put the final nail in the coffin on this case in a newly released document that we're going to cover in this video. And of course, it couldn't come without a bit of resistance from old SEC appointees like Caroline Crenshaw under the Biden administration and Gary Gensler, as she put out a statement directly opposed to the settlement with Ripple and the SEC. However, it doesn't really matter what she says or thinks at this point. She's just putting out a statement to stand her ground and serve the interests of her superiors, because she will not be renominated for her position after the Senate Banking Committee vote had been canceled. Now, this is all happening alongside the fact that the OCC, the comptroller of the currency, put out and clarified in a letter that national banks can buy and sell crypto assets at a customer's discretion. And we'll also be covering the very first Q1 2025 XRP markets report that they recently put out. So with all of this said, is right now the perfect time to buy, or will another opportunity come along to buy lower? Well, stay tuned because we'll cover it all in this video. And really quickly, before we dive in, if you haven't already, be sure to enter our weekly raffle where we give away $100 in XRP to a lucky winner every single Sunday. So you always have a shot, and you can enter and you will be nominated each Sunday as long as you do these steps. So the sooner you get involved, the better, because you don't want to miss this Sunday. All you have to do is come over to the Bull Runners HQ Twitter or X account, go to the pinned post and follow these steps. Like the post, comment XRP below, and then sign up for Blowfin using the link right here, and you will get a 10% deposit bonus for up to $50,000 that you deposit on this exchange. In other words, if you deposit $50,000, you will get a $5,000 futures bonus. And then every single Sunday, we will announce the winner in our daily newsletter. And all you have to do is click right here in order to join that list by grabbing your free ebook called Altcoin Secrets, which uncovers the 23 secrets to help you become a crypto millionaire. All you have to do is click this link, enter your best email, and you'll see the winner every single Sunday sent directly to your inbox, which could be you. In other words, you could win $100 worth of free XRP, and it's that simple, ladies and gentlemen. But be sure to go through the pinned post on Bull Runners HQ. Now let's get into the video. And as always, if you're feeling blessed and bullish, comment 777. And if you're going to be the wealthiest person in your family tree, smash the subscribe button. Hello and welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Paul, and you can find me on Twitter or X at PauliDeFi, PAULIEDEFI. We have loads of news to cover. Arguably the most important is the fact that we have the official documents released on May 8th, which you can find directly on Bull Runners HQ Twitter, between the SEC and its settlement with Ripple. And so although we've already heard the terms, it's actually good to have it directly from Annalisa Torres, which is the United States District Court judge out of New York. Now, as a quick recap for those of you guys who don't remember or haven't been around the XRP community for quite some time, under Gary Gensler, the prior SEC chairman, which actually resigned when Trump won, which is a great thing for the entire crypto market, as they started to roll back all of their investigations into virtually every single crypto company that was trying to operate by the law, Ripple placed $125 million into an escrow account to be paid out to the SEC upon the final settlement. At this moment in time now, they have agreed to pay $50 million to the SEC, and then the other $75 million will be given back to Ripple. Now, the woman we mentioned earlier, SEC Commissioner Caroline Crenshaw, is again a Gary Gensler appointee, and she mentioned that this is not a settlement she can support, yet nobody is in support of her or the old approach to crypto that the SEC took, which was really just regulation by suing about everyone in the space without providing a clear regulatory framework. And I'd actually be hard pressed to find anyone in the entire industry that hasn't been begging for regulation from the top down. In other words, asking Congress, give us clear rules of the road, yet the Biden administration never did anything about that. And then when Trump became the sitting president of the United States and appointed Paul Atkins a pro-SEC chairman, the SEC under Mark T. Uyeda began to roll back virtually every single one of their investigations and lawsuits, and is now working to settle all of these lawsuits, and one of the biggest being that of Ripple, which will really set the industry standard. Now, that said, I did make some highlights from this May 8th article or letter directly from Commissioner Caroline Crenshaw, who again will not be in a position or a role of power at the SEC much longer, basically stated that this settlement, alongside the programmatic disassembly of the SEC's crypto enforcement program, and again, they enforced laws by simply suing companies and then telling them after the fact what laws they were breaking, does a tremendous disservice to the investing public and undermines the court's role in interpreting our securities laws. She sounds very similar to Gary Gensler, and I wouldn't be shocked if she felt pressured or forced to make these ridiculous statements in order to please her superiors or those that put her in this role to begin with. She basically states that first, the settlement undermines the court's order; second, the settlement undermines the SEC and its enforcement program; and third, the settlement is not in the best interest of the investors and market that our agency is tasked with serving and protecting. Yet what you might recall is back here on December 1st of 2020, they seemed to harm a lot of investors who were banking on XRP doing well. And guess what? When they sued, price crashed, and even in the 2021 bull market, it failed to break out for new all-time highs and follow the rest of the market, and actually sat in this range from 2020 all the way to October and November of 2024. In other words, more investors were harmed during this period of time holding on to XRP because of this overhanging or looming lawsuit with the SEC, when instead they could have simply provided clear regulatory frameworks that Ripple would have abided by anyways, considering they are one of the most above board companies in all of crypto. So yes, it's quite refreshing to see this news. Now, this leads me into the Ripple Q1 2025 report, which is actually likely going to be the very last report we see from them. Now, they're saying it's because they've always been transparent and will continue to be transparent, but that this report was used against them at the SEC level. I'm not too sure if that's completely the case. They don't really share anything that you can't find out by doing a little bit of digging, but it is nice to see a report directly from them every single quarter. That said, Ripple has made the decision to sunset the report in its current form starting in Q2 of 2025. Either way, the key highlights in this report are the fact that the institutions continue to back new XRP products like the first spot ETF in Brazil, or Franklin Templeton filing an S1 form. You had CME announcing the launch of XRP futures and getting the proper oracles for data feeds. Also, you had the SEC officially withdraw its appeal, which we just talked about. And then arguably probably the biggest news aside from the SEC deal, the fact that Ripple did acquire prime broker Hidden Road for $1.25 billion, which we've already covered over and over and over again on this channel. Either way, XRP stood out as a top performer and at one point in time outpaced Bitcoin and Ethereum. Still, at the end of the day, Ethereum and Solana trended sharply downwards while Bitcoin hovered near break even. In other words, XRP truly demonstrated clear relative strength, which we've seen and covered on the charts. And so this is where things get relatively exciting, because in the breakdowns, XRP was actually holding up far better than virtually all other cryptos, including Bitcoin. As you can see here, we had a strong breakout to the upside come November 20th or 19th of 2024, and we remained above this range, what used to be a resistance at about $91,700, until the breakdown on February 24th. In other words, there was a period of about 3 months we hovered above the range of $91,000. Then with that breakdown and the Trump pump, we saw resistance at the range for quite some time and saw an intermediate term downtrend looking at Bitcoin. From that point forward, when Bitcoin actually bottomed on April 8th, you can see that Bitcoin has been on an absolute tear to the upside. And we're talking to the tune of, if I just go from the bottom of the actual candle to present day, 35% in gains for Bitcoin. Bitcoin has actually been leading the market, considering you could put an intermediate term downtrend right around this range right here. And again, I'm not going to make it perfect for the sake of this video, but you can see we're pretty dang close along that trend line with a fake out right here, more downside, another breakdown, and then finally this breakout above the range high. Now that said, we've put in consistently higher highs and higher lows and are now sitting at $103,000. So yes, Bitcoin has now been leading the market or ahead of all of the other major cryptos in terms of its breakouts. But this is really exciting news, because this gives us a chance and an opportunity to accumulate XRP. Now, the one major difference is not the fact that XRP is currently lagging, although it is, it's the fact that it actually didn't break down nearly as hard as Bitcoin. As you can see, it actually held up pretty dang well above the $2 range. Right here on the right hand side, you can see I have $2 right there. And so Bitcoin, while it continued to break down and trade below the range, XRP broke down literally one time, okay? Same time as Bitcoin at its lows of $74,000. However, it broke right back above the range and is held, and it has failed to put in new highs above the range right here at 250 or 260. But still, we are currently in an uptrend, and this is officially where I'm going to consistently be adding to my position, which has given us some time. As of yesterday, okay, or I would say the day prior, on May 8th of 2025, you can see right here, we broke above this descending wedge. We are now above that support at $2. We're above the prior high right here at 230. We're currently trading at 236, and the price just hit a new local high of $2.42. So yes, this is an intermediate term uptrend, and we're also above that danger zone. And I would argue the real danger zone right here was this range between, if I could get the actual box tool, between about 230 down to 216, right in this range. You can see we had a lot of resistance. We played with the range a little bit. We broke back down to 207, and then in a single day, we pumped hard all the way up to 230 as investors are getting more and more of an appetite to buy into risk. And virtually any crypto is considered a risk on asset by asset managers. In other words, asset managers have an appetite for risk. They're going to buy products that tend to trend stronger in uptrending markets than virtually anything else. And XRP is one of those. So right now we have a really good opportunity to accumulate anywhere above the 225 range. If it's anything above 225, I'm really excited. And I've consistently been now averaging into XRP in a dollar cost averaging manner. Or for those of you guys who want to swing trade this thing a little bit more, starting to weight in your positions. In other words, for example, if I were entering right here the very first time, I'd do 10 to 15, 20% of my portfolio, just depending on your risk profile and where you're at. And then I'd add another on every single follow through day, or even just a touch back down to the 225 range. I'm totally happy and fine. I'd add more to my position or scale in as the market continues to trend up, because Bitcoin right now is looking really good and back in really healthy territory. We are officially above the bull zone at $95,000. And so things are looking really good for the entire crypto market, not just Bitcoin and XRP. But again, XRP is a great buy right now considering it has been lagging a little bit. So I do expect on any bullish news whatsoever, or just in a random day, for XRP to pump hard right back up to that, I would say like $2.65, and if not $3. Then from that point forward, I could easily see this thing in this bull market environment hitting the $10 range, just because it's a nice even round number, and because it's one of the largest cryptos by market cap, it's got a lot of institutional adoption. They're likely going to get that spot ETF. You have a lot of excitement in a pro crypto environment in the United States, pro innovation. You know, it's going to get a lot of support, and so any breakout really above that $3 range, I think sky is the limit. $5 would be my first major resistance, just because it's a psychological resistance, and then 10 would easily be the next place. So I think something like XRP could hit at least a $10 range. Now I get it, there's a lot of people all over YouTube and all over Twitter or X talking about some ridiculous and insane targets, but if you've been around long enough, you realize that even with all of this bullish momentum, and even the fact that XRP can pump 500% in about 3 short months, it still cools off for quite some time. It doesn't just go to $1,000 overnight. And all of this talk around a private ledger, yes, there are private ledgers, but they're private for specific banks where they just use the XRPL technology. However, there is only one XRPL for XRP, the token. In other words, they're just using blockchain technology from Ripple. That does not coincide with this token and its valuation. So yes, it's going to go through normal cyclical patterns of any market. And there's simply no way around that if it is truly a transparent blockchain and crypto, which is exactly why we would invest in any crypto to begin with. We want them to be a blockchain, we want it to be transparent, and we want it to do well long term. And I believe a $10 price just to start would be a great return on something that has the market cap as large as this one does. So anywho, I just want to say thanks so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to subscribe to the channel, and also go ahead and enter our sweepstakes to win, or potentially win, that extra $100 in XRP by this Sunday. Till then, I will see you in the next video, my friend. Goodbye.